What's up, ghosts and goblins? It's me, your girl, Nat. And joining me, as always, is my best friend, Katie.
What up, homies?
Today, we're going to delve into some major suspects in the Jack the Ripper case, as well as perhaps some other fun theories. So, sit back and open those ear holes, because you're listening to Wading into the Void. Alright.
My ear holes are open.
Alright, yeah, open them puppies up. Put the speculum in them.
Ow.
Your ear's getting a pap smear.
Jesus. When you mentioned pap smears multiple days in 1 week.
It's important! Go get a pap smear. Go get tested. Go make sure that you are healthy if you have a uterus and vagina and cervix. If you have a penis, go get your prostate checked if you have a prostate.
If you have a wiener, go get your prostate checked.
Mm-hmm. So, I want to just jump straight into our oracle. So, of course, we're going back to our Halloween oracle by Stacey DeMarco with illustrations by Jimmy Manton. And the card that we pulled for today... I just realized my camera isn't on, so I was just gonna hold it up to the camera.
Oh.
But the card that we got for today is Joy. And Katie, I'm gonna describe what it looks like to you, because I think it'd be funnier to describe it anyways.
Okay.
So, imagine, like, a 40-year-old white female.
Okay.
But she's, like... wearing a maternity gown, but she's not pregnant.
That's
her
a
arms,
choice.
Her arms are up in the air, and she's looking, like, woefully off to the side. Not even smiling. And there's just, like, fall leaves all around her, and one big giant fucking leaf transposed behind her.
That does not sound joyful in the slightest. I'm so confused.
It's the funniest thing, because this card is Joy, and she's like, she looks so deadpan.
You're like, this is the most solemn fucking picture I've ever seen in my life.
It looks like her arms are not her arms. Like, it looks like they hang on. Actually, you have to see this. They fucking photoshopped or something this dress. Look at this.
Okay. That is so bad.
They're not even arms. Jimmy!
Those are literally just lines with a gradient, Jimmy. That's not even arms.
I'm so confused. This is, like, so weird the more I look at it. But you see the maternity dress?
Yeah. Really
Braylon McCurdy is gonna be born next fall. Right,
Braylon Josiah McCurdy. Thank you very much. You need a Jesus reference in there. Mm-hmm. Jeremiah 1582 or whatever the psalm is, or
I don't fucking know. That's fucking hilarious though. So Joy is all about rejoicing in the present. So this card is basically saying it's time to find the joy in this moment and to find that joy more often. So when you see this card, it's basically saying that it's time to find the joy in this moment and to find that joy more often. Actively seek pleasure and build more of the things that give you personal joy and laughter in life. So they make... I'm assuming this is a fucking joke, because they say, after all, we build in appointments for the dentist. Why not for our own pleasure? Like, I'm supposed to laugh at that. But, and I can imagine this 40-year-old woman celebrating fall and Braylon laughing at that. So, I love it. I love you, Stacey DeMarco. You fill me with joy in the present.
She's just like, fuck it all.
It's It's been a everything. It's been a day. It's been a week. It's been a fucking year. We're here.
Yeah.
Basically.
I agree.
So, to start, I just want to say that there was a lot going on at this time in Whitechapel.
Oh, yeah, there was.
There were actually 11 murders in Whitechapel between April 1888 and February 1891. Although, of course, it's debated as to whether all of them were the work of one culprit. Mm-hmm. And alas, we have our canonical 5. So the other 6, I don't really know where those fall.
There are 3 that they question whether or not they could be contributed to Jack the Ripper. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of them were just other sick fuckers kind of piggybacking off of it so they could get away with it.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Basically, yeah. I know, like, at that time, like you said in one of our previous episodes, they were trying to pin everything on gang-related crimes. Mm-hmm. So some of those could have actually been gang-related murders.
Oh, absolutely.
But I don't know. So...
I feel like the more that time went on, the more they just got more and more desperate, but weren't able to turn anything over. So... Basically.
So... In our previous episode, we covered America's first serial killer, H.H. Holmes. And that was, like, within the past, like, what, 5, 6 episodes before Halloweek?
I think so. But Natalie, why are you talking about H.H. Holmes? This is Jack the Ripper's miniseries.
So, I made note of it in those episodes, but I'm going to go into more detail in this episode. It seems very obvious that old Herman and Mr. Jack share some common similarities. Mm-hmm. So, what do you say? Let's dig in.
Let's do it. Tell me about Herman.
Herman the Worman.
Right. We have Harry Hawker and Herman Mudgett.
Yes.
Gross.
So, Henry the Hawker had me fucking cackling yesterday while I was editing. It's great. It's a great episode. I love this series so far.
It's good.
So the trail of Ripper murders ends at the start of 1891, and Holmes's murder spree is thought to have began at the end of 1891 in Chicago. Okay. So we're seeing very close time frames between both of the murders. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Holmes had been killing long before that, but very sporadically, and many attribute his, like, heating up period when he was most active after the murder castle was built. Uh-huh. So that's when you saw most of the mortalities. So, should Holmes and the Ripper be the same person? The times work out very conveniently for Holmes to travel between England and America. Because during this gap, ship records show a person under the name of H. Holmes made the journey over to good old England.
England!
Could this perhaps be the same H. Holmes as the one we've covered and talked about, who had his murder castle? I don't know. Let's talk about it.
He's one sick fuck, and he could have been bored on vacation. So...
So, Holmes was renowned for being a document keeper. However, between 1888 and 1891, i.e. the time of the Ripper murders, mm-hmm. Holmes had no documents, and there were no traces of where he was besides this one, like, ship record. Mm-hmm. So, he was certainly not accounted for in Chicago. And during 1888... according to the ship records and according to rumors, Holmes apparently went to visit his old school buddy, Edmund Buckley, who we talked about in his two-parter.
Yep.
He went to visit him in London, England. Apparently, Edmund Buckley is originally from Whitechapel.
Oh.
Wouldn't you know it?
That's weird. Okay.
He is the child of a very wealthy family in Whitechapel, which is interesting because Whitechapel was mostly poor people. But I did look at multiple sources and they all said that, so that was really interesting to me.
Huh.
But, as you know, Buckley and Holmes were partners in crime. They ran insurance scams and often sold corpses as well as organs and skeletons separately from a full fucking corpse to medical facilities, which was not really an uncommon way to make money in the 1800s, but the way that they sold the corpses and were acquiring the corpses was definitely fucking sketchy.
That's so interesting because I never actually, like when you were talking about H.H. Holmes in our two-parter, I never made the connection with Jack the Ripper, even though you mentioned it, that he was essentially harvesting organs from these women and then just like, I just like, my dumb ass could not connect that apparently, so...
Well, yeah, he was selling the bodies essentially for medical purposes, which what were they doing with cadavers at that time? They were dissecting them, pulling out their organs, studying bones, studying all of that stuff. So why not sell random organs as well?
Yeah.
Why not split up the organs to different medical facilities and make money off of everyone?
And the thing is, what one of these medical practitioners is going to go and tell the police they just bought a fucking uterus when some lady literally just got chopped to bits and had her uterus removed?
Exactly.
Like, especially if, you know, obtaining these materials isn't legal.
So here's another kicker. According to census records, Holmes apparently had a residence in Whitechapel.
Really? Okay.
Buckley and Holmes, people believe, were trying to sell bodies to medical schools and hospitals during that time he was there. And after trying to sell a body to a local hospital, a formal complaint was filed against them. And those records place him in the Whitechapel area around the time of the Ripper murders. So he's like there.
No, the timeline's definitely perfect, oddly.
So was he the cause of death for the canonical 5? Or was he also just there killing those other 6 people who were part of the 11 total murdered in that time frame? I don't know the way in which those 6 people were murdered and what happened to them exactly, but if we had that information, we could maybe kind of come to a conclusion.
Yeah, a consensus on that would have been fantastic, but you know how things are.
So let's look at some actual, like, solid evidence.
Okay.
Well, I say solid, but I don't know.
Let's look at some shaky
evidence. Talk about it, yeah. So, there was a composite sketch created of what people thought Jack the Ripper looks like. It was done many, many, many years after the fact. So I don't know if that is even really accurate, but take a look at this photo.
Huh.
It's kind of there.
It is pretty similar
down
to that,
it's like it's
bridge.
H.H. Holmes. It's definitely H.H. Holmes mixed with Freddie Mercury.
Absolutely. But
100%. Like, literally. They
who's
threw him
to say,
in an AI mixer.
Who's to say that Freddie Mercury wasn't Jack the Ripper's doppelganger?
I don't know. That would be interesting. But sketches of what the Ripper supposedly looked like were drawn from the testimonies of over 13 witnesses who saw the Ripper in action, apparently. And this picture really looks like Holmes. I mean, you got the mustache. So I wonder if you take the mustache off of both of them, do they really look that similar? I don't know.
That's a really good question.
Because a mustache changes someone's face.
It definitely does.
And I feel like both of them having mustaches side by side make them look a lot more similar than they actually are.
The one thing I notice that's different is, like, the prominence of, like, the cheekbones and the shallowness of the cheeks, but...
And the butt chin.
Yes, the butt chin, for sure.
He definitely has a butt chin. But, yeah, so this is, like, one of the things that is, like, okay, they kind of look pretty similar. However... One of the people who's spearheading this Ripper and Holmes are the same person thing is actually Jeff Mudgett, who is Holmes's great-great-grandson. So this would have been his one son that he had that got away with his first wife, I believe. Yep. Rob, I think was his name.
I think it was Rob.
This would have been his, like, great-grandson.
Okay.
But yeah, Jeff is pretty well certain that he has all the fucking facts, right? He wrote a book and is, like, working on a documentary with all this information. He apparently has H.H. Holmes' like, journal that was never released to the public. So that would be really interesting to see. I want to have police or forensics actually look at it to see if it's legitimately H.H. Holmes's journal and not just his great-great-grandson trying to ride off the back of his infamousy.
Yeah, like a handwriting... Yep, a handwriting analyst would be, like, really cool to get their hands on that.
So, speaking of, like, handwriting analyst... Let's go back to the Dear Boss letter that was supposedly written by the Ripper.
All right.
In which he even gives himself the name Jack the Ripper. So that was sent to the Central News Agency in 1888, as we talked about.
Yes.
And according to linguists, they think it has American idioms in it. Which is interesting. Because it seemed like they were faking that accent.
Yeah, the formal nature of the letter.
Yeah, they were like, yes, because that one was the one that wasn't like, in there, I need that. It was the first one. So that one was written very formally, very, like, business-like. And
Holmes was an educated man.
Yeah, that's
Despite the fact that he, like, did not do very well in school because he got distracted with his own bullshit, but he was an educated man.
He did amazing in school, actually. He excelled. He was very smart. The only thing that he was really distracted by was the corpses.
Yes.
And was like, I don't actually agree with this curriculum because I can't play around with corpses, and left. So he was, like, bored by the curriculum. So if that says anything, that means he was incredibly intelligent.
He is a psychopath with Asperger's. Basically.
Yeah. I am a doctor.
I'm a fucking genius.
So, in the Dear Boss letter, the killer described his plan to cut the ears off of his next victim. And on September 30th, Catherine Eddowes apparently had one of her earlobes severed. I don't know. And while it was never proven the Ripper actually wrote the letter, the mentioning of cutting a victim's ear seems very interesting.
Coincidental.
Because the letter had not even been published in the papers until after her body was found.
Yep.
Meaning that this could have been a real connection to the killer.
It could have.
And a handwriting analysis expert who was recommended by the British Library compared the Dear Boss letter to known handwriting samples of H.H. Holmes.
Oh, okay.
And the expert concluded that it was very likely that it was written by the same hand.
Oh, that's awesome.
And just to be absolutely sure, Jeff Mudgett sent samples for computer analysis to confirm the expert's findings. And the computer also showed that there was a 97.95 chance that H.H. Holmes wrote the Dear Boss letter.
That's pretty high.
Isn't that interesting? So either H.H. Holmes was around at this time and was very involved in the paranoia during this time and wanted to fuck with people and wrote the letter, or he was involved somehow.
I mean, I don't hate either of those ideas. I could totally see him being bored and just being a dick and sending in letters.
And if these sources are correct and not just, like, piggybacking off of, like, one original source making up that he, like, wrote a ship here, met Edward Buckley, who is also from Whitechapel. Like, if they're not piggybacking off of one fake source and these are all real things that happened, like, I'm sure he would be involved somehow.
I mean, I would totally agree with that. I mean, dude was such a narcissist.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. Now, let's talk about why it probably isn't Holmes.
Okay.
So, despite there seeming to be a lot of evidence for both of these killers to be the same person, I feel like a lot of it could probably be picked apart. Like that picture. We basically just immediately picked it apart. It literally looks like Freddie Mercury.
It does.
Like, the noses are way different. The only thing really similar is the very thick eyebrows, dark eyes, and a mustache.
Yeah.
And the ears both kind of protrude. But other than that, the entire face shape is different. You have somebody as Jack the Ripper who has very high cheekbones, sunken cheeks, very thick square jaw, and a cleft chin. Whereas H.H. Holmes had a very small, round head, kind of a square chin, flat, and very soft features, and a bulbous nose. Yeah. So, if you really look at it, they're very different.
There's enough.
Think they were just kind of pushing it with the mustache.
Yeah, honestly, as someone who works in art and visuals, there are things in this depiction of Jack the Ripper that are just set to immediately draw your eye to kind of trick you.
But if it makes it any, like, creepier, when we did our Akashic Records, that is what that man in my Akashic Records looked like. That was following me down the hallway. Put a fucking hat on him, a top hat, and that's fucking him. That was creepy as shit when I first saw that picture. And then I was like, it's probably like that one guy everyone sees in their dream or whatever.
Oh my god. I've seen him before. And he was like a rapist in my dream, and he was like trying to get me, and I was like,
I don't like that.
No, I hated it. It was terrible. Don't recommend. But, yeah.
So going back to it, here's another thing. People think that the Dear Boss letter wasn't even written by the killer, but by journalists or local looking to create more action. So like I just said, H.H. Holmes could have been in the area and been like, oh, this crazy shit's going on? Let me help a homie out, another murder homie, and write this spicy little letter to make it look crazy. And I could see him doing that just for the fun of it. Like, he's basically on fucking vacation for a couple months. Like,
I could totally see it.
Yeah. So Holmes was also a very common name in the 19th century, and you have to remember, Holmes is not his original name. He is Herman fucking Mudgett. So he basically gave himself the name fucking Smith of this time.
Yep.
So it doesn't prove that H. Holmes was H.H. Holmes.
Yeah.
on the ship to England. Holmes was also known to go by a bunch of different names, especially trying to, like, cover up his trail. So I would assume if H.H. Holmes was planning on going overseas and committing crime or multiple crimes, I don't think he would have used his name. He's smart. We have to remember that he's a smart dude, constantly covering up his trail, constantly moving around to cover up his trail, and I just don't think he would use his full name.
Yeah, I don't think he would.
So
he'd probably change it like he did 1,000 times.
It could have been like H. Herman or something. I don't know. Herman Holmes or some random shit like Charlie Doper or something. Mm-hmm. Henry the Hawker, you know.
Henry Hawker. It just registered. It's been such a long day.
Henry the Hawker? Herman Holmes? H.H.? Hang on! Sorry.
Was Henry the Hawker H.H. Holmes? I mean, look at the schnoz on that guy.
As hell. That would be funny as fuck. That's true. Maybe he gave himself a nickname while he was on vacation. I don't know. Like I said, like, I don't know. It's crazy. So, lastly, why he's probably not Jack the Ripper. We all know Holmes's motivation was his fucking greed.
Yeah, and what was he getting from these women? Nothing.
Well, he was getting specific organs. However, Holmes's whole thing was getting people to sign life insurance policies to get a large sum of money when they died.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm assuming the comparison to selling a whole physical body and all of the organs inside of it, as well as getting a life insurance policy payout, in comparison to just a uterus or just a heart or left kidney, is probably astronomical at that time.
Yeah, it's probably pretty different.
The difference is so stark.
The black market has inflation just like everything else.
So I'm thinking the Ripper seems to have definitely killed for a very different reason than Holmes did. Because to me, it doesn't seem like the Ripper is fueled by greed, because there's nothing he's really gaining. I feel like what he's taking is more of a trophy for the fact that he killed them and took something important from them.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than using that to sell or something like that.
I can agree with that.
And if the motives are different, which they very clearly are, then the murders are probably different as well.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that.
And as I've stated in previous episodes, the Ripper seems like an incredibly jaded person. Mm-hmm. Attacking a very specific type of woman. A woman in sex work who was poor and a severe alcoholic, usually older, but it doesn't seem like age is really a factor here because Mary Jane Kelly was like 27, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. H.H. Holmes killed basically anyone. He killed children, he killed men, women, literally anyone he could get his hands on.
Yeah. No, he did not discriminate whatsoever.
No. So, that's why I'm like, I really don't know in the end. I think H.H. Holmes could have been involved somehow, but I don't think he was necessarily the direct killer.
Yeah, no. I feel like he admired from afar.
So, the next person that I want to talk about, I remember them coming up in the media a few years ago, maybe around like mid-2000s, I think. Okay. I remember hearing about it and being like, wow, this person really seems like they could be the killer. And yeah, so let's talk about Walter Sickert. Apparently, several authors linked Walter Sickert to the Jack the Ripper murders.
Okay.
I don't even know. Over the years, like, all these people who are writing about Jack the Ripper were like, this guy, he seems really sketchy. So, according to some of the authors, they think he's an accomplice in the Whitechapel murders.
Okay.
While others have depicted him as knowing who was responsible.
Okay.
And then, of course, you have the others who are like, yeah, he's straight up Jack the Ripper.
You're like, he's
So,
the guy, okay.
either way, a lot of people think he's involved somehow. Just like I think H.H. Holmes is involved somehow. So, Patricia Cornwell wrote a book in 2002 called Portrait of a Killer. And this is the book that I remember hearing about. It's called Portrait of a Killer, Jack the Ripper Case Closed. And she says that Sickert was in fact the man who carried out the crimes and is Jack the Ripper.
Okay.
So she has a bunch of information in her book. So we're just going to talk about a few things that she talks about.
All right. Hit me with it. I'm ready.
So, of course, she is very successful and wealthy. So she isn't restricted by any type of budget or anything like that. So she is throwing all of her money into figuring this shit out, which is nice. But I feel like some of it is a little biased a little bit. But I guess we'll talk about that when we go through this.
All right.
Cornwell's entire thing was applying modern forensic techniques to the Jack the Ripper case. And her whole goal, obviously, is to solve it for everyone. And when her book published, people were, like, fucking freaking out and going crazy over this book. Because she basically was like, I believe 100% that Walter Richard Sickert committed those serial crimes. That's her quote, word for word. So, according to Cornwell's theory, Walter Sickert had been made impotent by a series of painful childhood operations for a fistula of the penis.
Damn.
I'm starting off strong.
I was not imagining that. But hey, what happens when men are impotent? They find release elsewhere.
So, for those of you who may not know what impotent means, it means when someone with a penis is unable to achieve a sexual erection.
Thank you, Dr. Nat.
Basically not allowing them to have sex. So, this kind of fits into my theory about this jaded person who's attacking these people who have sex and have the ability to have sex. But apparently the impotency scarred him emotionally and left him with a pathological hatred of women, which, obviously in that time, she said, made him carry out the murders.
Uh-huh.
However, doubts were obviously raised about this theory because, one, I don't know how the fuck she knew he was made impotent. Two, St. Mark's Hospital, where the operations on Sickert were supposedly performed, actually specialized in rectal fistulas, not genital fistulas.
Well, I guess that would make sense why it got messed up then.
Yeah, exactly. So it's either he didn't have a genital fistula, or they were like, okay, he has some type of fistula. We're aware how to work on rectal fistulas. Let us see if we can apply that to the genital fistula, and they fucked up. But
strong possibility.
However, a lot of evidence suggests that Sickert was anything but impotent.
Oh.
His first wife had divorced him because apparently he cheated on her. And that was her petition for divorce, was that he adulterated, basically.
Interesting.
In addition to that, it was believed that he had several mistresses, and a lot of people think he fathered at least one illegitimate child.
Damn, okay.
So the case for him being impotent is basically, like, non-existent.
Yeah.
So going back to the hatred of women, what kind of evidence do we have against that? Not fucking much. So I'm just absolutely tearing her shit apart. But I still think that it's an interesting theory. And you should read the book if you're really interested in it. But in her book, Cornwell cites a series of Sickert's paintings that were inspired by a murder in 1908 of a Camden Town prostitute by the name of Emily Dimmick. Okay. And I remember hearing about the paintings, and that's what got me interested, because I was like, okay, this guy's drawing paintings killing prostitutes around the time after Jack the Ripper. That's really interesting. And according to her hypothesis, the series of pictures he painted bear a striking resemblance to the post-mortem photographs of the victims of Jack the Ripper. So I'm thinking either he somehow saw the pictures somehow of the victims and was inspired, or he somehow killed these women. But I don't know. It's an interesting take.
It is very interesting, but I feel like there's a lot there that's just speculation. So
yes, exactly. That's why I was saying I feel like a lot of her book is just complete bias. Like, it is just, I found this one person, and I'm gonna try to pin as much as I can to him to make it seem like he's H.H. Holmes.
Yeah. Henry Hawker has more proof than him, so just saying.
And, like, it even says people don't even think he was fascinated by murder. And they don't think that he was painting these paintings to depict him killing these people. They think he was just fucking weird, basically.
Yeah, he seems, not stable.
Which we'll see with the next person as well.
All right.
Here's the last thing. This is just so stupid. Okay, well, I'll cover this one thing and then this last thing, and then... But then they have DNA too, so I guess I'll cover these last three things and fucking blow this shit apart. But,
okay.
So... Usually when
we love Detective Nat, Jesus.
Usually when you're trying to pin somebody to a crime, you have to link them to the area, to the location at that time.
Yeah, that's kind of a necessity.
Apparently, Sickert wasn't even in fucking England when the murders were committed.
Oh, boy.
He apparently sent letters to his family, and his family sent letters to him while he was apparently on vacation in France for the period that corresponds with the Ripper murders. However, were those letters fake? We don't know.
Yep.
But, speaking of letters, Cornwall believes that Sickert was responsible for writing most of the Jack the Ripper letters.
So he's just a prick. I mean...
And this is what she does. She frequently uses statements from the letters to strengthen her case against them. So she immediately was like, Sickert wrote all of these, and so this is how I'm going to pin him as the murderer. There's no proof.
Uh-huh.
There's no fucking proof.
Yeah. I don't like Sickert as an option.
Nearly all of the police at that time shared the opinion that none of the letters were written by the killer. So, like, it's so dumb.
I know, I really don't like him as a suspect.
But also, all of the letters vary so greatly in grammatical structure, spelling, handwriting, even the, like, cadence, the way that they flow is just so different. You have people trying to sound Jewish. You have people trying to sound Irish. You have that one very professional Dear Boss letter. They are all so fucking different. It's clear that it's a bunch of different fucking people. And she's like, yep, all sicker. So.
Yeah, no, she seems to be just pointing the finger a lot, so...
So also she kind of threw her money at a bunch of DNA tests, and she got a bunch of envelopes that she thinks Sicker licked, and compared the DNA to that found on the Ripper letters, and there was, in fact, a possible match found on the Dr. Openshaw letter.
Oh, okay.
However, the DNA comparisons that they used focused on mitochondrial DNA, which could be shared by anything from between 1 to 10% of the population. So it was basically not even unique to him, and anybody really could be the fucking Ripper at that point. So,
anyone with ginger hair could have been Jack the Ripper because of this.
Yeah, basically. And, like, even the paper, a bunch of people had access to that type of manufactured paper. So it's like, literally nothing here makes sense. And he could have been responsible for some of the letters, but most of the letters were hoaxes. They were fucking fake. So even if he wrote the letters, he was just writing fake copycat letters. He just wanted to be cool.
I don't like him as the primary suspect.
Yeah, so I'm done with him.
I
thought the paintings were interesting. That was, like, the only thing. And the impotency. But then they were like, yeah, he had, like, a bunch of illegitimate children.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's just interesting. So, now let's go to another suspect. And this is going to be the last suspect because I'm a little hungry baby.
Mood.
And, let me just tell you now, we likely won't be covering all of the suspects. Just basically the ones that kind of struck our fancy. And I picked them from the bunch because I recognized most of the names. Because I think in total, there are about 80 potential suspects.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a lot. And they had 120 people that they questioned. So there were so many people around this time, around this murder. And I'm not going to cover all those people. So,
She's like, no.
Let's talk about Inspector Aberlin's favored suspect.
Okay.
So, Severin Klazowski qualified as a junior surgeon in Poland in 1887. And later that year, or early the next year, he came to London and found work as an assistant hairdresser, which is very different. In October 1889, he married Lucy Battersky, and by 1890, he was working at a barber shop in the basement of the White Hart pub in George Yard off Whitechapel High Street. So this person is actually in the fucking area. The couple...
The shade.
The couple actually moved to America in 1891, and he became a barber in Jersey City. I don't know why he was ever a fucking junior surgeon. That shit makes no sense. But it's establishing that he had medical knowledge.
Yeah.
But apparently they had a very violent argument, and his pregnant wife, Lucy, returned to England and gave birth to a baby girl in 1892. And so, a few weeks later, Klazowski returned to London, And they were briefly reunited. But in 1893, the bastard found another woman, coincidentally named Annie Chapman.
No.
And they lived together until she left him in 1894.
Oh, shit. Okay.
So, however, very interestingly enough, he acquired a very lasting keepsake from the relationship and actually adopted her fucking last name. And was now furthermore known as George Chapman.
Okay.
Very big fucking switch up. I wonder why. Let's find out. So his next lover, Mary Spink, he apparently married her. I don't know, but she died on Christmas Day in 1897. And his next wife, Bessie Taylor, died 13th February 1901. So, interesting. However, Chapman married again. And then his wife, Maud Marsh, also died on the 22nd of October of 1902.
No man is this unlucky.
It's giving H.H. Holmes.
Yeah, a little bit.
Her family sought the opinion of their own doctor, who became suspicious. And the bodies of his first two wives were actually exhumed, and significant traces of poison were found.
I have no words. Like,
so this guy straight up is a murderer. Even without the Jack the Ripper murders, he is a murderer, just like H.H. Holmes. He is exactly like H.H. Holmes. So Chapman was actually arrested and found guilty of the murders and was executed on April 7th, 1903. However, following his conviction, there were also suggestions in the press that he might also have been responsible for the Jack the Ripper murders.
Okay.
So, journalist Pall Mall Gazette sought the opinion of, by then retired, Inspector Frederick George Aberline. And he actually admitted that he had never harbored any suspicions against Chapman in relation to the Jack the Ripper murders until the Attorney General had made his opening statement at his trial. And since that opening statement, Aberline was, quote-unquote, so struck with the remarkable coincidences in the two series of murder, end quote, that he had not been able to think of anything else for several days past. So he was basically like, damn, these dudes might be the same dude.
Yeah, a little bit.
But the Gazette quoted Aberline saying, quote, "There are a score of things which make one believe that Chapman is the man," end quote. And Aberline was pretty convinced that the work of the killer was the work of an expert surgeon, although that kind of got blown out of the water like 500 times because this person basically just fucking desecrated the bodies and just happened to pull out their wombs and left kidney and heart. Because they were not very delicate. They were not very skilled. They were rushing and trying to rip shit out of their bodies as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that really means that they were an expert surgeon, but I think they had basic medical knowledge of where certain organs were.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
I don't know either. Aberline was also interested about how Klosowski's arrival in England coincided with the beginning of the murders, and he was originally living in George Yard, where the first murder was committed, and the murders ceased in London when Chapman went back to America after the fact. So, according to Aberline, similar murders began to be perpetuated in America after he landed there.
Okay.
So, okay. Where does that leave us? what did Aberline get wrong about this whole situation? He's apparently wrong in a lot of what he says about Chapman. Although Chapman did have surgical training, there is a considerable debate, like I said, whether or not the Ripper actually possessed surgical knowledge, because the murders are just not even able to be described as work of an expert surgeon. Like I said, he basically just smashed around in their fucking guts until he got something.
Uh-huh.
Look at the picture of Mary Jane Kelly and tell me that was an expert surgeon. If it was an expert surgeon, you would have seen a perfect amputation of her arm that was laying beside her. You would have seen a perfect incision in her stomach, opening up her stomach cavity and pushing her organs aside to actually take her womb out and give her a proper hysterectomy. That would have been if it was an expert surgeon. However, this was not. But also, Chapman arrived in London around the time the murders began. But also, we've talked about this like a million times already. So did thousands of other immigrants. A ton of people are moving to the area at this time.
Yeah. There's so many people that could be unaccounted for that you don't know where they're coming from, what their background is. I don't know, like, this guy's definitely fucking shady. He totally killed all of his wives.
Yeah.
But poison is a long way from ripping out someone's innards.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to talk about next. That is the, like, basic, like, big, huge difference between these two people. It doesn't make sense that this person who murdered people in, like, a frenzied violence and ripped out their fucking organs, slit their throat to the spine, decided, oh, I'm gonna move to America and I'm gonna start poisoning people. However, I do think he is very similar to H.H. Holmes. Like, creepily similar. Everything he's doing is very oddly similar to H.H. Holmes. And I think it's like, I feel like it's the New Jersey H.H. Holmes. Because he moved to New Jersey to work as a barber. He is literally like fucking Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street. Like, attend the tale of Sweeney Todd. His skin was pale and his eye was odd. But, like, it's just interesting. So, he basically, like, slowly poisoned them, too. He was, like, consistently poisoning them for a period of time and watching them, like, slowly die.
Yeah, guy's just an asshole.
And, Aberline basically was like, yeah, I think that's more evil than chopping them up and ripping their intestines and shit out, because he's watching them suffer in silence and it's his wife. It's like, I don't know about that.
You're fake, bro. You're fake.
So he's goofy. I don't know. But that's his favorite suspect. And I think that's an interesting suspect. But I think if H.H. Holmes was an unmasked killer, I would be looking more towards that than Jack the Ripper.
For sure.
So that's all I have for suspects today. I have 2 more that we're going to be talking about in our next episode. And I believe Katie might have some other fun things in store for us in that episode as well.
Yes, we're gonna try our hardest, and if we can't find something directly relating, I'll go a little out of the box.
Okay, so I just want to kind of put it out there. How are we feeling so far? Do you think you know who Jack the Ripper is?
Me or the listeners?
Both. Mostly rhetorical, but...
I personally have a preference.
I think I also have a preference, but we haven't talked about them yet.
We also haven't talked about mine yet, and I think they might be the same person.
If not, they're definitely one of the 2 I'm going to be talking about.
Yes.
So it's kind of hard to say when a lot of the evidence is so much more recent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like half the shit from John Mudgett is, like, things that have never been released. Apparently, they're accurate and real things, but we've never had our hands on them to be sure. So this could just be his word of mouth, you know? Or it's an actual legitimate thing. But I personally... I want to believe H.H. Holmes is Jack the Ripper, but I personally just don't see the connection. I see the connections of him being in Whitechapel and him probably selling bodies and killing some people, perhaps, but the way that Jack the Ripper, once again, killed his victims and who he was killing, how he was killing them, is so vastly different than how H.H. Holmes was killing people. And we know in the murder castle, there were so many different ways to die, but he wasn't killing them to the violent extent that Jack the Ripper was killing them. He had his gas chambers, he had his stretchers, he had all those weird, like, hanging rooms and shit like that, but he wasn't, like, attacking people and destroying their bodies because he wanted to sell them.
Yeah. That just doesn't add up for me as well, especially because he was very much into asphyxiation.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
So I just...
Well, I feel like asphyxiation was the easiest way to kill someone without harming other parts of the body.
Yes. And if he was that into asphyxiation, the first thing he wouldn't have done was slit their throat.
Exactly. So, yeah.
There's definitely a lot that adds up with that one as far as connections go. I could see him
being in the location, being around at the time.
I could see him working with his friend who was also shady as hell, or someone in London at the time.
Like, you know what? I could see one of them, either Edmund or H.H. Holmes, being that guy who lit the pipe and followed the guy out of the corridor. But that's all. I don't see either any of them being Jack the Ripper.
I could see all of them being the weirdos that show up first to the crime scene.
I could see them maybe knowing Jack the Ripper and, like, talking to each other as, like, a little book club for serial killers, you know? And this Chapman guy, he probably got that idea from H.H. Holmes to poison his wife.
Oh, for sure.
Like, what? Come on. It's the exact same fucking thing that he was doing. It's insane. It's so crazy.
Slowly killing them. So, yeah. I can't wait to see what you have tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm ready for Halloweek to be over, to be honest. So, I think we've made some really great episodes, and I'm really proud of all the work that we've put into it and have yet to put into it, because this episode is being recorded on a Tuesday of Halloweek. So, it is actually Halloween, the day we are recording this. I have little children walking up to my porch and taking handfuls of candy.
And we're talking about Jack the Ripper.
We're talking about a horrible murderer. But yeah, I feel like going back to, will we ever find out who Jack the Ripper is? I don't know, because it feels like anything that we quote-unquote discover now is very unreliable. Just because, like, how do you know this information? How do you know this information from... legitimate. Katie, I actually did the math. It's 135 years ago.
Wow, I'm proud of you.
And that's why I edited episode 2, because Katie and I were debating how many years were in between right now and Jack the Ripper. We were like, it has to be at least 150. My first guess was 140. I was pretty fucking close. So it's 135 years. So I cut out all of us debating, so...
I did notice that.
So that we didn't sound fucking dumb. So...
But now you know.
Now you know the exact amount of years. So, do you think we'll ever find out who Jack the Ripper was? I don't.
I don't. There's not enough actual physical evidence that they collected from anything that could have been preserved that you could really test anything off of.
Yeah.
So no matter what, it'll always be theoretical. But it's fun to explore.
Let's talk about our other 2 suspects tomorrow, and let's reconvene and ask those same questions again, because I'm really interested, because I don't think you know about that second suspect enough. I think you know about that first one, because you like them.
I do know about that first one.
The second one's very interesting. But that is all for today, folks. Tune in tomorrow for our Halloweek finale. I am actually very excited to have another Halloween in the Halloweek in the books. I know I'm like editing, recording the week of editing and releasing. But like,
just think of the beautiful break that we're gonna take afterwards.
I know. It's totally worth it though to put so much effort into something that I think is really cool, and it's gonna be nice to listen to all these episodes back to back to back to back. So
yeah, no, that'll be really awesome. It builds up the anticipation, you know?
So that's all I have. Thank you guys for sticking around and listening every single day. If you listen every single day on release day, please send us a DM. Let us know what you think. Respond to the poll on Spotify. Like, what do you think of this episode? Tell us every single day when you're listening to the episode. I want to know who those people are who are listening every day. Because I see there's people listening. So
every single day.
Every single day.
Love you.
Yes. So let us know.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I'm curious who's listening every day.
Yes. Well, bye everybody. Happy Halloween.
Yeah. Happy late Halloween, because this is coming out on Thursday, but
but we told you we're recording it on Halloween, so
work. All right, bye everyone.
Bye.